The Arizona sun was sinking low, painting the sky in shades of amber over a quiet suburb where lawns stayed trimmed and mailboxes gleamed. Mark and Emily Harper's house sat on the corner, a modest single story with a Navy flag snapping gently on the porch. It wasn't much, but it was their place they'd hoped would bring peace after tough times. Mark, a Navy vet who'd spent a decade at sea, now ran a tire shop on the edge of Phoenix. His hands were calloused, his demeanor steady, the kind of guy who fixed problems without raising his voice. Emily, a nurse who'd seen her share of chaos in the ER, was still healing from a miscarriage that had left a quiet ache between them. They'd moved here for a fresh start, but what they got was a storm they never saw coming. This neighborhood had rules pages of them, typed up in HOA handbooks thicker than a phone book. At first, it was just nitpicky notes, a warning about their flower beds, a letter about their trash cans showing from the street. Mark handled it all with a nod and a shrug, thinking reason would keep the peace. He didn't know the HOA was less about order and more about control, run by folks who like power a little too much. Their so-called security team wasn't police, wasn't even proper private security, just guys with cheap badges and egos bigger than their authority. It was just past 8:45 p.m. when the knock came. Not loud, not frantic, just firm enough to cut through the hum of dishes Emily was washing. Mark, flipping through an old engine manual, set it down and opened the door. Two men stood there, dressed in crisp, dark uniforms that looked official until you squinted. The taller one, square-jawed with eyes that didn't blink, had a patch on his chest, HOA Security Enforcement. Below it, a name tag read Officer Vance. His voice was flat, practiced. Violation under Article 14B. Unauthorized flag on your porch. We're coming in to remove it. Mark frowned. That's a Navy flag. It's up to code. You're not stepping inside. Vance didn't flinch, just tilted his head like he'd heard it all before. It's not approved. Step aside. Mark held his ground, voice calm but firm. We can talk, but you're not crossing this line. For a moment, it was a standoff, two men staring each other down in the porch light. Then Vance nodded to his partner, a wiry guy who slipped silently toward the side of the house. Mark's jaw tightened. Hey, stay where I can see you. But Vance stepped closer, blocking his VYEW. Don't interfere. This is a compliance action. Inside, Emily caught the sound of boots crunching outside the back door. Not a neighbor's dog, not a kid chasing a ball, something deliberate. She dried her hands, heart picking up, and stepped onto the patio. That's when everything broke. Vance didn't wait. As Mark's attention split, Vance shoved past him, barking, clear and in force, like he was storming a bunker. Emily barely got a word out before Vance rounded the corner. Her hand flew to her chest, but Vance didn't pause. He grabbed her arm, spun her hard, and slammed her against the wall. Her head hit with a sickening crack, a cry escaping before she crumpled to the ground, blood trickling down her temple. Mark heard it hatch sharp, awful sound, and the world shrank to a pinpoint. He saw Emily on the tiles, her hand twitching, her eyes wide with shock. Vance loomed over her. No urgency, no remorse, just a cold, bored stare. She resisted, he said, like it was nothing. Mark's breath stopped. He wasn't a mechanic in that moment, wasn't a neighbor. He was a husband, and something deep inside him forged in years of drills, deployments, and oaths snapped into focus. Not rage, not yet. Clarity. Cold, sharp, lethal. He moved without a word. The Glock 17 was where it always was, locked in a safe under his workbench. The code was muscle memory, the weight of the pistol familiar in his hand. When he stepped back into the hall, the barrel was steady, aimed square at Vance. Don't move, Mark said, voice like ice. Vance smirked, hand twitching near his belt. That's a federal offense, threatening an officer. Mark's eyes didn't waver. I know who you're not. His thumb flicked the safety off, the click louder than a gunshot in the silent room. The second man, now by the front door, reached for something on his chest, maybe a radio, maybe worse. Mark didn't wait to find out. He shifted aim and fired once, the round punching the drywall inches from the man's head. Paint chips scattered, and the guy froze, hands half raised. Vance's smirk faltered, his eyes darting to Emily, still on the floor, then back to Mark. Mark's free hand tapped the emergency button on his phone, linked to their security system. A silent alarm pinged the sheriff's department, but Mark wasn't counting on them yet. Face down, hands spread, he said. Don't test me. Emily's faint whimper cut through the tension, her hand reaching for the wall, trying to pull herself up. Mark's grip tightened, but his voice softened just for her. I've got you, Em. I promise. The room was a held breath to fake cops, one bleeding wife, and a man who'd drawn a line he wouldn't let them cross. 6 minutes later, red and blue lights flooded the street. Cruisers rolled up, silent but swift, and real officers stepped into chaos. Mark lowered the Glock as they entered, hands up, voice steady. Homeowner, armed, weapon secured. They're not police. One look at Vance and his partner told the story. Their uniforms were knockoffs, no department patches, just generic badges and a helmet cam on Vance's gear, recording like it was a game. Zip ties went on fast, no arguments. EMTs rushed to Emily, wrapping her head, her arms trembling as they helped her to a stretcher. Mark stayed, handing over doorbell footage, fake credentials, and a stack of HOA notices that now read like threats. The truth came out fast. Vance was really the VYD Vance Carter, a washed-up security guard fired for roughing up residents in New Mexico. With a buddy who had no training, he'd been running a scam in Mark's neighborhood, posing as an HOA task unit. They'd shake down homeowners for fake violations, pocketing cash settlements while hiding behind made-up rules. The HOA board swore they knew nothing, but email showed they'd turn a blind eye, even praised volunteers who kept the neighborhood in line. Mark didn't stop at the police report. With Emily home from a hospital, he hired a Leyera former prosecutor who didn't mess around. They filed a federal suit, unlawful entry, assault, impersonation, the works. The HOA's defense collapsed when residents came forward with stories of late-night VY sits and mystery fines. A judge didn't just rule for Mark suspended the HOA's authority, a first in the county. The board was gone, its accounts frozen. Vance and his pal faced felony charges, their fake badges now EVY Denke. The neighborhood changed. Mark's Navy flag flew higher, joined by a sign. This is a home, not HOA territory. Neighbors nodded in respect, some apologizing for staying quiet too long. Emily, still shaken, started writing. What began as a journal became a blog. Saw Nurse Against HOA Tyranny Saw. She wrote about that night not to dwell, but to take it back. Her post struck a nerve, drawing stories from across the country. Fines for nothing, threats over flags, rules that felt like chains. Her calm, clear voice honed in hospital rooms gave people courage. The blog grew, pulling in lawyers, advocates, even ex-HOA board members who'd quit in disgust. It wasn't just a blog anymore, it was a movement. The courtroom was the final chapter. Months later, Mark stood before the judge. No notes, just truth. If you break into my home, he said, eyes steady. Badge or not, my Glock speaks for me. The room went still. The judge didn't just clear Mark, praised him, citing the Castle Doctrine and calling for new laws to reign in private security. Arizona listened. A new law curbed HOA powers, demanding transparency and community votes. That night, Mark and Emily sat on their porch, the flag catching the breeze. The air felt lighter, the silence earned. They paid a price Emily's scars, Mark's burden, but they'd won something bigger. The street was theirs again, the neighbors awake. The Glock stayed in its drawer, not out of fear, but readiness. Above them, the sign gleamed in the fading light, a quiet promise. This home was theirs, and no one would take it again.